Claire, I feel like we've just kind of like hashed out a podcast before the podcast. Firstly, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it genuinely, because obviously you're a busy lady. You have a very interesting background in law, which I've just kind of dived into and like interested in, and we'll dive into in this podcast. But for anyone watching this, sort of what's your sort of history and background?
So I'm a solicitor.
Yeah.
And for the first 20 years, I specialised in criminal defence.
Okay.
In Liverpool.
Cool. So was that always something that you set out to do? Was that like a burning ambition of yours when you were coming through?
Do you know, my burning ambition was to be a journalist.
Really?
Yeah. I loved writing. I loved telling people stories. I always remember my dad being a bit worried that journalism was really competitive and I maybe wouldn't really get a job.
Yeah. Could imagine it to be competitive.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's one of those industries where you really have to work your way up, through the years.
Am I right in thinking that journalism and law are kind of not connected, but like intertwined in terms of like journalism follows law in terms of like covering it?
I guess so. The right kind of journalism does. And when I think back to why I wanted to be a journalist and how I like to tell stories and to help people, that's kind of what I've ended up doing anyway, in a very different way. Because certainly when you're a criminal defence lawyer and you're standing up in court and you're doing your advocacy, you are telling people stories, helping them to process that. So they are linked in a lot of ways, I suppose. Yeah.
I love it. So at this point, you would have been in your early 20s.
Yes.
So what made you stop journalism and go into the law? Or what kind of diverted you into the law game?
Well, I applied to do a law degree and I applied for journalism as well. I got marginally better results in my A-levels than expected. So I decided to take the law route. Yeah. And it was a snap decision. And I did that. I had a little bit of experience in law because my dad was a postman back in the day, but he also did a bit of process serving, which is kind of like, serving affidavits and that kind of thing. So he had a few law firms that he knew and he worked for, and I'd done some babysitting for a few lawyers and a few summer jobs opening the post, doing the photocopy and that kind of thing. So maybe it started to kind of like seep into my brain a bit more than I actually thought. Yeah. So off to uni and did a law degree and very quickly thought, I like this. I love it. This is for me.
I love it. Like obviously what we spoke about before we started recording was some of like the public inquiry stuff that you've done.
Yeah. And
obviously we'll dive into that. But currently you're working with working for the Jackson Lees group, but it's Brodie Jackson Cancer. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I work for Brodie Jackson Cancer, which is the Access to Justice division of the Jackson Lees group. Yeah. And Jackson Lees is a huge group, a big firm on Merseyside. We've got offices in Liverpool, Hillsborough and Hoylake. And a long history, amalgamating lots of different firms along the way. But yes, I work for Brodie Jackson Cancer, which is very much focused on access to justice. And I work in the major inquests and inquiries department.
I love it. You spoke quite passionately about people having the right to defence, having a right, and you spoke quite passionately about that. Tell me a little bit about that and like how, like you mentioned about, sometimes you've had a time in your life where you were getting up in the middle of the night and not delivering the best news all the time.
Yeah. So, as I said, 20 years in criminal defence is a long time. But I loved my role as a criminal solicitor. But it is hard work. It's you're on call. I used to do 7 days on, 7 days off. So I could be up all night, the pager going off, and when someone gets arrested, that's it. That's off you go. You can't wait. 3 o'clock in the morning. Pager, yeah. Good old-fashioned pager.
I remember the pager.
Good old, and they're still used now because it's such an effective way of getting hold of people. Yeah, and criminal defence is difficult because you are you're not delivering good news very often. It's a lot of damage limitation about getting the best result for somebody that you can. But I think what we talked about earlier is that I am a huge believer in access to justice, and you're right as an individual. If you find yourself on the wrong side of the law for whatever reason, whether that's at the lower end of the scale or the very most serious offences at the top, you have a right to be represented. And I'm very passionate about that. And we get a lot of things wrong in this country in terms of the law, but the legal aid provisions within criminal defence are some of the best, in the country. And I was a duty solicitor for a long time. And, you walk into court as a duty solicitor and you do not know what you're going to get. You don't know who's going to walk into that room, what their backstory is, what's happened to them. So you've got to be non-judgmental. You've got to be compassionate. Yeah. I do think it takes a certain type of person to be a criminal defence lawyer, because it's hard going, and you are meeting... As a lawyer, generally, you are always meeting someone either at the very lowest part of their life or the very highest part of their life. You might be helping them out if you're a civil practitioner, because someone's getting married or they're buying a house, and that's a positive thing. Or you are at that part of their life where everything has come crashing down around them, and you've got to be the person they need in that situation. And that's quite a lot. They're big shoes to fill, I think.
Completely. Absolutely. Luckily, I've never been on the wrong side of the law. But the one experience I've had in that situation was when I got called for jury duty when I was about maybe 26, 27. And I was there for 5 weeks.
5 weeks?
Yeah, I was there for 5 weeks. I was stressed. I was stressed, honestly. I've
never done it.
It was so stressful, honestly. So, it was a sexual assault case.
Yeah.
And it was, so like you said, like you go in there and you try and be as like, the judge talks to you about it.
Yeah.
And you it's kind of random what you get, like what case you get. Well, it is random.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the judge talks to you about like what you can expect, what you need to do, how you can't tell it, like you can't go in and talk about it, And then every day that it was happening, Monday to Friday, all day, something had come and it'd change your mind, and then something else had come and it'd change your mind, and then you'd be back and forth, and all of a sudden you're thinking, I don't want to send someone to jail who's innocent, or it's serious.
Pressure,
it's the pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
And it's stressful, and like a lot of people were getting like really wigging out about it. And that's like the most experience I've had in that setting, actually. But even that, I mean, for you to do what you do, I mean, that's amazing. Like, because I done 5 weeks in that setting and it was fucking stressed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely stressed. So was it a natural transition for you from going to that to like the bigger like sort of stuff in politics and in the public inquiry stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of the work I had done when I was a criminal defence solicitor, I did a lot of serious and heavy crime and duty solicitor work, but I also spent many years working in fraud. So big cases, banking frauds, that kind of thing. And so when I saw the job where I am now, that was specifically to work on the COVID inquiry. And the COVID inquiry was the biggest statutory public inquiry in British history. It was huge.
Is that still ongoing now?
The hearings have finished. It's ongoing in the sense that it was a modular inquiry. So what happens is at the end of every module, the chair prepares a report and that's released. And they're kind of about halfway through releasing those reports. Okay. So in terms of our work as a department, we still analyse those reports and they come out and we still speak to our clients about them and we have webinars and things like that. But the actual inquiry itself and the hearings have finished. Yeah. But yeah, I just thought, God, that's interesting. Is it? Am I ready for a change? Is it time for a change? Yeah. And the skills I had at the time, which were, I was very used to working on cases that have a really high volume of material. And in the COVID inquiry, we had millions of pages of evidence. So I made the move and I left. I waved goodbye to my pager and my life in criminal defence. And I went over.
That must have been a sad day getting rid of that pager.
Yeah, I don't miss it. And then, weirdly enough, I do a volunteer role outside of work where I do still have a pager because I work on the lifeboats. So we have a pager on that. So I've still got one, but it's but I can choose when I turn that on and off. So it's not quite the same.
I love
it. So I joined Bereaved Jackson Cancer, and which is an amazing firm to work for, with such a history within Liverpool and Merseyside generally. And within a short space of time, I was managing that department. We had 40 paralegals at one point working on the inquiry, and we represented almost 7,000 bereaved families. Wow. So we represented the bereaved families, the COVID bereaved families for justice, who were a campaign group in the inquiry. And my firm is actually responsible for having the inquiry set up in the first place.
Wow.
So my colleague Elkin, during the pandemic, literally went to number 10, met Boris Johnson in the Rose Garden outside number 10 and said, with the representatives of our campaign group, and said, you need to hold a public inquiry. These bereaved families need to understand what has happened, what has led to this point, what the government has done about it. They need answers, and this is the best way to get them. And I think several weeks later, the inquiry was announced.
Wow.
So,
and then it was game on for you, was it?
And then it was game on, yeah. So it was the COVID inquiry itself was, a really demanding and difficult inquiry to work on. A pandemic like that will come along only perhaps once in most people's lifetimes.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, and I think in every single person in the country was impacted in one way or another. Obviously, we worked with bereaved families, but people were impacted in all sorts of ways. And the inquiry looked at all those different things. They looked at vaccines. They looked at health and social care. They looked at all sorts of different elements of it. So that's where I started working. So the wider department I work in is called Major Inquests and Inquiries, which is a bit of a mouthful and sounds a bit strange. But what it basically means is, so when we use the word major, that can either relate to the type of work we're doing. So, for example, the COVID inquiry was a major public inquiry, or it can involve. So it can mean that we're dealing with a mass casualty incident like the COVID inquiry.
Yeah, for sure.
Or it can be a major incident that actually only impacts like one or two people. So, for example, we're currently working on a major inquest, which is the Heaton Park synagogue incident, which is where a male came along to a synagogue in Manchester. He killed one person, and when the police arrived, he was wearing a fake suicide vest. So they shot him, and in shooting him, they also killed and seriously injured two members of the congregation.
Oh my God.
So we represent somebody in that inquest. So that is a major inquest, not because it involves hundreds of thousands of people, but because it was a major incident.
Yeah.
And major...
Is that because it could potentially affect a lot of people in terms of like, it's like a religious...
The incident was major, obviously. It was at a synagogue.
That is important work. I can't even imagine how important that work is.
I think what I've realised and what I've learned from working on these kinds of cases, and these they're major in that they're nationally important, but for the people involved themselves, it's critically important. But what keeps you going is what families who've been bereaved or have been impacted by state harm or something's happened to them, what they want to know is the truth. And they want that truth before anybody else gets it. And they don't want you to sugarcoat it. They want it in its raw form, and they want every bit of it, and they don't want anything left out. Yeah. And being able to achieve that for people in that situation is a really important thing to do.
For sure.
So over kind of the last couple of years, we've been involved in lots of different things. We represented the adult survivors of the Southport Inquiry, which obviously was,
horrendous,
a horrendous thing to happen, and became an international point of interest, really. And we follow on with that. So one of our clients in that case is Leanne Lucas. She was the yoga teacher who was very seriously injured at the time. And
did she survive? Did she? Yeah.
She survived, yeah. And what she does now is she's got a campaign called Let's Be Blunt, and she's advocating for blunt-tipped kitchen knives. So we've been working with her to kind of help her move along with that campaign, and because our work doesn't stop at the end of what someone's been through, at the end of an inquest or the end of an inquiry. Because you build relationships with people, and they don't just disappear overnight. So that human part of connecting with someone and kind of working with them is something that you can't just turn it off.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can imagine with all these things that are very obviously serious in nature, for misinformation to be like a major thing. How do you deal with that? Like, is it something that you sort of try and just deal with facts, or is it stuff that you've got to deal with in terms of like public outcry and opinion and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's really difficult because certainly when you're working on inquiries, they are very strict around what information is released to the media, what information is released to the public. And then whenever there's a start of an inquiry, especially if it's high profile, we then start to get the press interest coming in and queries and, do you want to comment on this and do you want to comment on that? And we always take our lead from the client. If it's something they want to comment on, then we will work with them, and we use reputable journalists who we have a trusted relationship with, and we do it that way. But very often the client doesn't want to comment. They don't want to add to that speculation. They don't 100%. Want to talk about the gossip or the things that don't help. And especially if they're right in the middle of it.
100%.
Because it's a bit like what you just talked about when you were doing jury service. You felt that pressure every single day. When you're right in the middle of an inquiry, you're just consumed with it, and sometimes it's all we can do to keep our clients protected. So why we'd never hide a press request or anything like that from them. That comes from them and what they want to do and the right thing for them.
Yeah.
And sometimes we might help them to do a separate news piece, or it might be a podcast, it might be a print edition in one of the newspapers,
for sure.
But on their time when they're ready, and covering the things that matter to 100%. Them. It's really hard, actually.
Yeah, I mean, having worked in social media for the last sort of 8 years, I late 2019 we started, and we didn't actually start the business in terms of like trying to do social media as such. We actually started, believe it or not, as a video editing company.
Oh, right.
So all we would do is edit. We didn't even film at that point. We just edited videos, and it was great.
Yeah.
And as I learned more about social, kind of slipped, tripped, and fall into that really. The whole social media landscape changed from kind of longer form news to short form video content.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of battled with this idea of like how noisy social media is, because it's so easy for us to pick up our phone now, make a video and post it.
Yeah.
Or put something out there and post it. And it's become so noisy. I've always battled with it, because how do you articulate like a really dense topic like we're talking about now into 20, 30 seconds? I think it's like impossible, but people do it. And as a result, people are like really confused, actually.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And I can imagine it to be quite, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm open to obviously having I'm open to you telling me that I'm wrong. I can imagine it to be quite frustrating for families and people who are involved in this stuff directly to hear the stuff being amplified so loud. With the likes of, Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, where things are so easily accessible to people now.
It is, and what I mean, a lot of the work I do now is around campaigns, helping campaigns to sort of to move forward. And when I'm advising a new campaign, I will talk to them about social media. Get yourself, all your handles and decide what your content's going to be, because it's still really important. Even it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Yeah. It's kind of like it can be the right thing or the wrong thing. But in terms of when things are really high profile, so I'm thinking particularly of Hillsborough Law Now, which is a coalition that I work really closely with, and that's a huge coalition. Hillsborough Law Now began from obviously from the Hillsborough inquests. But is now a group that includes the bereaved, Grenfell, the Manchester Arena families, the post office victims, infected blood, the truth about Zane. I mean, it's absolutely massive.
Wow.
And what they do is the only real social media they have is on X. That's their most prevalent one, and Facebook. And they just, they don't comment on everything, but when they comment, it matters. And what we do is when there's a really important thing around that we do need to comment on, rather than lots of people going off and doing separate interviews and different messages, we just do a good old-fashioned press conference. And we do that in our offices. We did one not so long ago in Bereaved Jackson Cancer. And it just means that everyone comes to you. You're only answering the questions once. And then we'll control kind of what goes out or releasing statements. It's old-fashioned, but actually a formal statement that's come from a campaign group, which gives you the line. And you learn so much about press over the years. Like, you don't really want it more than one sheet of paper. You've only got so many characters if you're on X. Instagram Reels work well. The stories work well. So we tend to do a lot around imagery as well, photographs,
I love it.
quotes.
I love it.
But it is really hard and misquotes, because the clients will come straight back to you and say, this paper said this and this did that, and you're thinking, I don't even know how to start unpicking that. So
yeah, it must be tough. Like, I mean,
it is hard.
I've noticed Andy Burnham actually has started doing like more social media stuff,
videos. Yeah.
I actually think he's doing a good job of it.
Yeah.
And some of it could be interpreted as a bit cringy sometimes, but I mean, some of the stuff he's doing is actually really engaging.
But it's exactly what you just said. That's what people haven't got time to read a double page spread in a newspaper anymore. Yeah. But he does these. In fact, I saw something yesterday and he said, here's everything I've done since I've come in office in 60 seconds. Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? Yeah. It's that bite-size chunk of what you need.
Like, realistically, if he was to like compartmentalize every single thing he's done and explain it all, he's going to be there for forever, isn't he? Yeah. But making it like that's how people consume stuff nowadays.
It very much is so. And I had a meeting recently with the Liverpool Echo, obviously our regional newspaper, and we were talking about how we could get things into the press and what works well, and they were talking about videos and about how like that is a really important part, and how media's moved on so much in that, really. Yeah. And just doing those kinds of snapshot videos. And I think also if you do a video and you're there speaking in person, someone can't mess with your words. They can't twist what you've said, actually. It is. But then it's also complicated because when things are very, very serious, like they often are in the campaigns I work with, they're either serious or they're complicated by detail. So, for example, Hillsborough Law at times has been very, very complicated by virtue of the things that we were arguing with government over, that you cannot condense that down to something small. No. So that tends to be more of a statement, or here's our line, here's where we're up to. So it's a bit of a strange one, really.
That's why I love doing the podcast, I love doing this podcast because, yes, we can clip out 30-second sort of sound bites from the podcast, which are great, easy to consume. But when we're talking about topics like we're talking about now, it's much better to be done in a conversation like this. Oh, yeah. Rather than, like, say this in 20 seconds. How can we do this in the shortest time possible? Yeah. So that it gets, the algorithm kicked in or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. Like, podcasts don't necessarily get as many views and as much metrics online, but the topics are like, there's nothing convoluted about a podcast. Yeah. It's like what we're talking about is what we're talking about, and that's it. And
I suppose you can hook people in, can't you? You can put bits of it out.
It's like an ecosystem, right? Like, so, the sound bites that we could get, what you're talking about, you could get probably, 20, 30 pieces of content out of an hour. Yeah. Quite easily. And then them clips direct people to the longer form stuff. Because if someone's interested, right? Like, where we're from, across Merseyside, Hillsborough's very close to home. Oh yeah, and it means a lot to a lot of people.
It does.
And it's very serious, and people take it serious, and they're very protective about it. But one thing that just kind of blew my mind a little bit about what you just said is like how that law has affected so many other things, like Grenfell and all that kind of thing.
It's huge.
See, I didn't know that, you say. Like, that's a huge knowledge gap. And then I'm assuming that, like, I didn't know that. And I'm a football fan. I've got my ear to the ground. Like, I've got Liverpool mates. Do you know what I mean? And that is such a powerful thing, actually, that work has led to all this other stuff, like a domino effect of all this other stuff going on. I bet that's something you're quite proud of, actually.
Oh, I don't think I've worked on anything that's made me as proud as the work that I've done on Hillsborough Law now. Really? It has been to work on something so important and to have come out the other end with a groundbreaking piece of legislation that has been made by people power is just phenomenal and mind-blowing. Yeah.
Over the course of like 35, 40 years?
Yeah, well, the Hillsborough Law Now Coalition came about from what happened at Hillsborough, from the injustice at Hillsborough. And after the inquests, where they finally got their unlawful killing verdict, the families came together with two of the lawyers, Pete and Elphin, who I work with, and said, well, what can we do next? How can we change this? How can we make sure this never happens to anybody else, any other family? And that's how Hillsborough Law Now became a thing. And then over the last 10 years, that has grown by all these other campaign groups adding their name to it, like Grenfell and Post Office Horizon and Infected Blood. And the reason it matters and the reason that they're connected to it is because what Hillsborough Law has done is it's created what we call a duty of candour. It basically means you have to tell the truth, because who knew you needed a law that meant that you have to tell the truth? But if you think about what happened at Hillsborough and all the lies that were told, that was because there was no duty of candour. They didn't have to tell the truth about what happened. What Hillsborough Law has done has created a legal duty of candour and a legal duty to assist. So you have to proactively assist in inquiries and in investigations. So it matters because at Grenfell, there were lies told. At Post Office Horizon, there were lies told. So it's that common theme of institutions and people in power not telling the truth. Yeah. So that people who suffer an injustice at the hands of the state, and there have been so many of them, can't get to the truth. This big iron wall comes up and they can't get behind it. And Hillsborough Law has changed that. Yeah. It has changed it, and it will affect so many families going forward. Nobody else will have to go through those decade-long fights for truth and justice and accountability, because those in power will have to tell the truth. Those in power will have to engage. Those in power will have to assist and tell the truth and come to the table with what they know. And it's also created a new criminal offence, so that if you mislead the public, then you can go to prison. Wow. It's also created legal aid in inquests. Wow. So from now on, if you've lost a loved one at the hands of the state and you turn up to an inquest and the government bodies are represented and you're there with no one because you can't afford it, then you will be eligible for legal aid, so that you have lawyers. And that's
amazing.
So I mean, that's a very, very short whistle-stop tour.
It's a very inspiring outcome to a very kind of depressing situation.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm in absolute awe. Hillsborough Law doesn't belong to people like me and the lawyers who work behind the scenes. We were just the architects of that. Yeah. Hillsborough Law belongs to every single family member who has campaigned and battled and stood behind us over the last 10 years. As I say, born from the legacy of Hillsborough, but with so many other campaigns. And those campaigners have stood together. So the last sticking point of Hillsborough Law was that the government were at loggerheads over the security services about their inclusion in the bill and whether the law would apply to them. So it would have been so easy for the campaign to say, well, we've got this far, we've got 90%, but we'll take it. But if they'd taken that, they would have let down the families from the Manchester Arena because they suffered because the security services didn't tell the truth. So if they let the bill go through, when it didn't apply to the security services, then they were cutting out that whole part of their campaign group, but they stood firm.
That's
and
unbelievable.
that unity and that strength, and where these people whose lives have been torn apart, and you know they're never ever gonna be able to build their lives back to where it was before, where they find the energy to work on changing the law for the good of those who come after them. I just don't know how people do that. So to be at a point where we've got this new law that's now going to go through the House of Lords is just phenomenal, and to be a part of that has been unbelievable. And really odd, to be honest. I mean, the last couple of years, what I've learned about government and, you know, meetings and, you know, prime ministers and attorney generals and deputy prime ministers and Zoom calls with people, you know, that you never thought you'd be on a Zoom call with, has been phenomenal. But what it's also helped me understand, and what I've been trying to tell some of our campaigners, is don't be scared of politicians. Don't be scared of the people who run the country, because they work for you, not the other way around. And so it's made them feel a bit more accessible to me. And I've tried to help campaigns realise that those people in Westminster might feel like they're behind, you know, this amazing curtain and they're untouchable, and that's not part of a world that you can be in. But they literally work for you. And, you know, to get on board with that and realise that actually engaging with the lawmakers and engaging with politicians can be a really impactful thing to do, and can really, really forward your campaign and your aims. And that's, there's a lot there. But
well, do you know what? I feel like you're speaking with a lot of passion there, so I can see like how much it means to you, and that's like, it's great for me to hear that, because obviously our whole thing in the content room is content worth sharing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing we like really set out to do, and we literally wrote this in our business plan, was we don't just want to put stuff out for the sake of putting it out, so it'll get clicks and views. We don't just want to do that. It's got to be meaningful. So meaningful work is like one of our core values, and meaningful relationships is one of our core values. And so when I hear people talking like that, I bloody love it. Honestly, I do. It's funny what you said about the Post Office Horizon scandal thing, because I'm not going to mention any names, but I'll tell the story. Someone I know, and this is complete. Sounds really far-fetched, this, but it's actually insanely true. So about 10 years ago, I'm going to say 10. Yeah, it's about 10 years ago. Someone I know was working in the postie, and ever since he left school, he's a couple of years younger than me, so I think he's about 37, so he must have been late 20s at this point. And he got into a dispute with the post office about money. Anyway, one thing led to another, and they ended up going into like a legal battle, back and forth. The post office thought he was stealing money. He was saying he hadn't. And his dad had moved to Croatia or Czech Republic or somewhere with his new wife. So his dad wasn't around. So my dad was kind of supporting him with going through the course and going through the case and all that. Went on for ages. And so he was going through it, and he was basically losing this case. And I was saying to my dad, like, is it? And all the while he was like, I'm not guilty. Yeah. And I didn't do it. And I was saying to my dad, like, is he? And he was like, he's banged to rights. Like, he's completely done it. There's no chance he's getting off of it. It's just a case of like trying to get the best outcome for him. So anyway, he got sentenced to 18 months in prison for money laundering and fraud, which was crazy. Anyway, he served about 8 months in prison. So he'd done about 8 months in total, and then he'd done about another 6 months on a tag when he came out. And my dad was like supporting him the whole way through, and that was it. So he came out, got on with his life, ended up working with the civil service, kind of just moved on. And then a few years back, it turned out that all this post office, that Horizon stuff was coming out. And all the while when he came out, he was like, like, my brother lives in Thailand, my dad lives in the Czech Republic, and I want to go and see them, but he couldn't go to, like, he couldn't go on family holidays, he couldn't go to America because of his criminal record, he couldn't get a visa to go to Australia, places like that. He wanted to do all this stuff, but he couldn't do it. So it turns out that he went through all this post office Horizon stuff. Turns out he wasn't guilty all along. It served the 8 months. And from the government, he got given a £750,000 payout as compensation for wrongdoing. Had all his criminal record wiped.
Yeah.
And he's 37 now. And he's not in the position he wants to be in terms of like life and finances and all that kind of stuff. But obviously he's had this massive payout, and it was it was completely just wrong verdict of like, like it wasn't him all along, it was this system. And he's had a public apology off the government, and he's been given his payout, and that happens to thousands of people. Stuff like that happens to thousands of people.
Oh, yeah.
And that is nuts to think about. You know what I mean? It's completely bonkers. And I said to him, like, you know, your thought process straight away is, would you spend 8 months in prison for God, I don't think I could. Honestly, I don't think I could. Like, especially now I've got kids. You know what I mean?
And I think, you know, you'll speak to a lot of people who've been compensated for various things. And obviously, you know, compensation does help, you know, it helps make life more comfortable, and it helps make life more easy. But there'll be times of his life where he will always think about that time he spent in prison. And not just that, but like you saying, your dad supported him, and all that time with your dad not believing him. Because that's a really difficult thing. When I work with people, when you tell someone that you believe them, and you believe in their truth, and you believe what they're saying, you watch them become visibly more empowered and stronger, because when you're banging your head against a brick wall and no one will believe you, and no one believes that it's right, or that you're telling the truth, or you can't get the answers that you need, that's soul destroying, and that takes a long time to repair.
100%.
So, you know, those people who, the victims of the post office Horizon, you know, it's heartbreaking. You know, it really is, isn't it?
Yeah. And these are like salt of the earth people as well.
Oh, absolutely.
These are like just normal, everyday British people.
This is the problem. If you think about why we need a Hillsborough Law, and you think about the people that it is impacted, it is all people of a certain, you know, it's working class.
It's the same demographic,
Yeah, the same demographic. Because they've not been believed, or they've not been listened to. You know, would any of these things have been different if they'd have been people in different positions? You just don't know, do you?
No,
you know, and it's a really wrong part of society. But then I also think what has made those people so strong is their strength of character.
Yeah.
You know, if I think about the people I've met from Hillsborough, from Infected Blood, from the post office, they are some of the strongest, you know, bravest, resilient people you will ever meet in your life.
Oh, yeah.
I think they've got to be able to put one foot in front of the other, and to want to change the law for people who they've never even met. Because it's hard when you've been fighting for a long time. You pick up that sword, and even when, you know, you might get the verdict you're looking for, or you might get the compensation you're looking for, your sword might come down a little bit. I don't think you'd ever put it on the floor. I don't think you'd ever put it down, because I don't think you can.
No.
Because what has happened to your friend will always, even though he's only a relatively young man, that will impact him forever.
The emotional
really.
damage that he must have. I mean, speaking to him, you probably wouldn't like. You like, as an everyday person, you probably wouldn't notice, but like the mental and emotional damage that would have caused to him.
Oh yeah.
Of like just going through that and not to be believed, like you said, it's tough, isn't it? And when you look at other things like you know, the Manchester Arena or Southport or Hillsborough or whatever horrendous thing happened, there seems to be, again, to me, I'd love your take on this, is like seems to be like a purpose that comes from the pain of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like this horrendous thing has happened, but we are determined, and we're going to make it our life's purpose now for this never to happen again.
Yeah. It's so funny that you use that phrase, because Leanne Lucas, who's the survivor, our client from Southport, she talks about it, and she says it's about turning pain into purpose. Yeah. So it's exactly the phrase that you've just used. And I think that's what keeps people going, really. It's such an important thing. Yeah. I mean, the parents of Megan Hurley, who was killed at the Manchester bombing, Joe and Mike, we took them and a few other families to meet the then Prime Minister Keir Starmer a few months ago now, because we'd hit this stalemate with the bill and we couldn't get the security services over the line, and it was really sticky. And we thought, what can we do? From a strategic perspective, where do we go next? And we thought, well, we will take families, bereaved families who lost their loved ones at Manchester Arena, to meet Keir Starmer, and we'll get him to explain to them why the security services don't need to be part of this law, why it doesn't apply. But that was a really risky strategy from our perspective, because there's a really fine line between turning your pain into purpose and being a part of something, but then really intruding on someone's very deeply personal grief. And I'm really, really, so sensitive about turning that into some kind of exploitation, of people. But it was a risky move, and we asked them, and they agreed to go. So we took 4 families along. And Joe and Mike Hurley have never engaged in, they've never done any press around about what happened to Megan, because they just can't, it's too painful. They've never talked about what happened to her. But they said, it was a closed meeting, we'll go along. So we sat in this meeting with Keir Starmer, and one of the mums asked him how he would feel, how old and he had a son, I think it was 15 at the time, how would you feel if your son went to a concert and he never came home? And you were then lied to by the security services about what happened, and the full truth was concealed from you, and you learned things that meant it could have been prevented. How would you feel? And you're now telling me that you're not prepared to change the law to include the security services to stop this happening from anyone else. And it was a really tense meeting, and it was stressful, and it was upsetting. Yeah. Anyway, fast forward, some time later, and we did get the bill over the line, and Keir Starmer did have the security services in there. And then when he introduced the bill into Parliament, and he actually said that a turning point for him was meeting those families that day. And I was sat next to Joe in Parliament, Megan's mum, and we came out, and she said, I'm so glad that we went. I'm so glad that we did that. I feel like we've done something. I feel like we've moved forward. And as I say, I was so nervous about putting her through that and whether it was the right thing to do. Yeah. But they wanted to do it. They wanted to do it for the people who come next.
Unbelievable. But it's unbelievable work. I honestly, and I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your arse, I can't think of much more meaningful work than that.
Yeah, it is meaningful work, and I feel very, very privileged to be able to do it.
Yeah, I always say we make content. We're not saving lives, but in what you've done, you're quite literally saving lives.
Yeah, well, there's a group. I mean,
there's cogs in that machine that work together to make it happen. But you're an important cog in that.
Yeah, but I think there's a number. That's a good analogy with the cogs, because the way I look at it is, like I said, Hillsborough Law belongs to all of those campaigners and all of those survivors and all those bereaved people. Us as lawyers have helped along the way. We've been the architects, we've been the bits around the edges, we've been the glue weaving it all together, but it very much belongs to the campaigners. But the other side of that is we've had lots of other people who help and work really well. We've had really trusted and amazing journalists who've helped and supported the campaign from the start, who've been there when we've needed them and have really helped put it on the front page and given us the platform that we need. But also Bereaved Jackson Cancer, who I work for, justice is just woven through everything that they've done and everything they have done for the decades they've been in the business. And the pro bono support, because the work I do in there, I do that for free, and they allow me to do that, which is phenomenal, because it's such an important part of their ethos.
So good.
And the group who own us, the Mapped Group, our wider owners, are this is what we do. This is what we want you to go out and do. This is such a huge part of our story, of the story of Liverpool, the people we've helped over the years, and that's another cog, isn't it? Because without having that support and without having bereaved Jackson Cancer behind all of these things, they give me the freedom. Because, as I say, I work with lots of different campaigns and I help them along the way. And they give me that freedom to choose which campaigns I want to work with, to spend time with them, to give them pro bono advice, to help them, set up their GoFundMe page or their LinkedIn or their socials, and, help them with a strategy to move forward. And I help lots and lots of different campaigns. Some of them are local, some of them are national. And I'm just really, really lucky that I work for a firm that believes so strongly that access to justice is just non-negotiable, and give me the time to do that alongside my normal fee and work. So it is important work, yeah.
It is very important work. Obviously, out of pure morbid curiosity, what was Starmer's reasoning for not including the security in the first place?
So it was more complicated than that, really. Yeah. So he was basically up against the Home Office and MI5 and the intelligence services, and they were saying that it was too risky for them to be a part of the bill, and that they needed certain protections and certain limitations to do the work that they needed to do. And we'd always said that we would never, ever compromise national security, ever, and that there were mechanisms built into the bill that meant that if the security services needed to give closed evidence or provide evidence in a secure environment, that was fine. What we didn't want was them to be able to lie to us. Yeah. And as PM at the time, Keir Starmer was up against that very strong...
Isn't it such a weird thing that, you just got to tell people, don't lie?
Oh, yeah.
It's just such a simple concept.
It makes people fall over when they say, well, why do you need a Hillsborough Law? And I'm like, well, you won't believe this, but...
It's good to tell the truth.
Yeah, massively. And not just to tell the truth, but if you don't tell the truth, and if you actively mislead the public and mislead an investigation and an inquiry, that you should pay for that.
Yeah, of course.
You should lose your liberty, and that's what we've got. That's what we've now got in place, which is... So basically, if Hillsborough Law had been in place when the original... when Hillsborough first happened and when the investigations first started, those families who waited decades for the truth would have had it so much sooner. And the thing is, when there is a and a tragedy is not even a big enough word for it, but when you have suffered a trauma or a tragedy like that. And I think I spoke about this earlier. The families want and need and deserve the truth. But the longer that truth takes, the harder that is. The longer you wait for truth and justice and accountability, the harder it comes. 100%. And your grief journey can't really start.
I know.
Your way of putting yourself and your family back together, it's on hold.
I cannot imagine not having closure for 35 years on something like that. I just can't even fathom it in my brain. No.
Closure is such an important thing. I mean, with the COVID bereaved families, I mean, COVID is obviously a really difficult time. And closure comes in many forms. But one of the things I always found really difficult with working with the COVID bereaved was... yes, they were waiting for answers about, the pandemic generally and what happened and how our government managed it. But things like during the pandemic when you couldn't say goodbye to your loved one. So you never saw them. So some people went into hospital, they died, and you never saw them again. You couldn't see them before they were buried. You couldn't, You know, that those kinds of things, and even that's like a closure.
Well, that famous picture of the Queen sitting there at her husband's funeral, alone,
yeah,
and like a frail old lady at that point, and she was not far from the end of her own life.
No,
and she's sitting there on her own.
Which is a poignant photograph for lots of reasons, because it did demonstrate to everybody else in the country at that time that she as a grieving wife was actually no different to every other grieving wife in the country at the time. And you know, COVID is obviously, there's so much I could talk about that, but yeah, closure and accountability, and that's a huge word. Accountability.
I think like accountability and truth are two powerful words.
Oh yeah,
from my view,
huge.
Especially when a topic like that is so polarizing to people. You know, the whole country was basically just split. People, you know, even talking about it now, it still riles people up.
Yeah.
And I always try to keep like a more of a sort of a, you know, more of a fair outlook on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mistakes were made. You know, whatever way you lean, whatever it is, but it is polarizing to people, and it must be like, one thing I always think is it must be hard for people who were involved to keep that sort of, like, I once heard, I mean, this was just randomly in a public setting, someone was saying about, like, someone was talking, like, there must have been, like, an anti-vaxxer, I hate using that term, but people who didn't take the vax. But then someone else was there who was talking to them, like, their dad had died of COVID, or died, like, as a result of COVID. And it was like, well, my dad died. So, you know, like, it's one of them things where, like, that polarization can cause a lot of friction, I think. And
very topical.
It's tough.
I mean, bizarrely, what we did find out from the inquiry is that the vaccine program in the UK was actually one of the most positive parts of the COVID pandemic. That's something the government did well.
People a day.
It did. It was a well-run vaccine program.
Yeah.
There were lots of things the government got wrong, but the vaccines was generally quite a successful program, really. Yeah. But it's interesting, COVID, because, you know, we know, because the science tells us, there will be another pandemic. And what the inquiry has achieved is, okay, there'll be another pandemic. How can we do this better next time? Because that's, I mean, statutory public inquiries get a lot of bad press, I think.
Yeah.
People don't really understand what they are. They don't understand what the purpose of them is. But I'm a huge advocate for a public inquiry for lots of reasons. One, it is one of the very few ways the ordinary person can hold the state to account. Yeah. The only ingredient you need for a public inquiry is that it is a matter of public concern. Yeah. It's something that we need to talk about. Yeah. So, for example, at the moment, there's a big call for a public inquiry into media again over what happened to Jason Arday and his obviously very, very sad. You know, he obviously died by suicide, and you know, all that kind of thing. So it's that public outcry. This isn't right. This is something that could affect everybody and anybody, and we want answers, and we want to know what happened. So it's a really important part of our democracy, a public inquiry. And again, going back to Hillsborough Law, what Hillsborough Law will also do is it will make public inquiries cheaper, more to be run more efficiently, and to provide answers and accountability faster. Yeah. And with a lot of power behind it as well.
I think there's from the outside looking in, without knowing too much about it, it restores an element of public trust as well.
Yeah,
because
massively.
when something like COVID comes along and so much stuff's going on, if another pandemic was to happen tomorrow, a lot of people would not trust it. They wouldn't trust the government to handle it properly. So having that element of transparency actually is actually quite empowering for the country, actually.
Yeah, and the inquiries are public. Yeah. So what tends to happen is they're usually live on YouTube. You can watch them with a 3-minute delay. So nothing is hidden. So going way back to post office again, I was at an event, and one of the postmistresses, her name's Jo, can't think of a second name. Jo was there being interviewed, and you know, she'd had a horrendous time, obviously, false conviction and everything else. And the interviewer said to her, you know, well, it must have been amazing that day you were in the Court of Appeal and they overturned your conviction. That must have been the highlight. And she said, no, it wasn't then. The highlight for me was the public inquiry that came afterwards. She said, because through every other legal procedure, the criminal proceedings, the civil proceedings, she said, things were always held back. You know, we couldn't see that, or that pot disclosure wasn't eligible to us, or we couldn't have that piece of paper. She said, but in the public inquiry, that was it. Everything was laid on the table. She said, now I was seeing things for the first time that I'd been denied access to all along. So that for me spoke real volumes about the importance of a public inquiry, and the transparency of it, and for the public to see what has happened. And then the point of a public inquiry is to learn lessons and to see how we do things better for the future. Yeah. And that's empowering for the public as well, to 100%. Know that we have learned lessons and that things can be done differently next time. So, they're a really important part of sort of what, it's my bread and butter. It's what I work on. So I'm obviously a passionate advocate for them. I can hear
the passion in your voice.
But they are important, and there's a government spin on them. Oh, they cost too much. They take too long. Well, they don't need to, and they certainly won't. When Hillsborough Law is enacted onto the statute books, they will be much more efficient, because the law has now changed.
Yeah. And when you're spending your tax money, like people have a lot of reason, like. The government spend a lot of money, of our tax money, on things that we don't necessarily see the benefits of. Yeah. Whereas I think, from my perspective, when I pay my tax, if it goes into that, I'm happy to pay that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? You hope, as a person, as an ordinary person on the street, you hope you will never, ever need Hillsborough Law.
No.
You hope you will never, ever be at an inquest for a loved one where you're up against a state and you can't afford a lawyer. You hope that you would never, ever have a tragedy in your family where you can't get answers to what's happened 100%. To your loved one. You hope that you are not part of something that is so great that you need a national statutory public inquiry to find the truth. But it can happen to anyone on 100%. Any day for any issue. And I think that's a disconnect for some people. They can't see that.
Definitely.
But it is. It's any one thing. We represent the mum and dad of a little boy called Zane. Zane was killed a few years ago when contaminated floodwater flooded their home, and they've battled for years to try and get the truth of that. And the same floodwater that killed Zane paralysed his dad. And they're just one family trying to get answers. And they joined the Hillsborough Law Now Coalition, and they've helped us to campaign to change the law. And we've helped them in various ways to bring their campaign into the light. And now they've got an inquiry, and it's a major inquiry again. It's only one little boy, but floodwater entering your home that's been contaminated from an area that you live in. Can you imagine something like that happening to you, to your family, to your child? But that's important, isn't it? Because how many other people could that have affected? And there's a lot in the news at the moment, isn't there? Dirty water, environmental issues, and I think there'll be more and more of it.
Yeah.
But it's a privilege to be able to help Zane's mummy and daddy to find the answers about what happened to him. And they've been part of our campaign work for a long time, and it's and I bet you they never thought they'd be in that position.
Yeah.
But
I mean, with two little boys, stuff like that really hits home with me.
Oh, it's in your own home as well. In your own home.
I mean, my little lad Harry, he's 5. He turns 6 in this coming January, and he loves home.
Yeah.
He loves being at home.
Yeah.
So we'll be out somewhere, and we'll be having a good time, and he'll be like, "Dad, I want to go home now," because he likes being at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for something like that to happen in your own home, in your safe haven, is it doesn't even bear thinking about, really.
It doesn't. And then to have to battle.
I know.
For the truth about what has happened.
I know.
And what has led to that incident.
I know. It's bad, isn't it?
Because people can cope with.
Funny enough, round the corner from our house, literally just round the corner, we've got a big United Utilities thing going on. It's like roadworks and it's been dug up and everything. Yeah, so they're trying to improve the sort of safety of the Mersey.
Yeah,
but it's literally the hub of it is like around the corner from our house. So imagine something really bad happened there, and it came. Oh, it doesn't even.
Yeah, and you know, there's I mean, there's so much happening.
Yeah.
You know, around our country, and there's so much tragedy.
So to put like, obviously all this is quite kind of like dense topic. Yeah. Obviously the Prime Minister's just changed. Andy Burnham's come in. What would you like to see positively over the next few years in the government? So
really excited about the change in Prime Minister. Yeah. I know Andy Burnham because he has been a amazing supporter of Hillsborough Law over the last decade. In fact, it was Andy Burnham who first presented it to Parliament back in 2017, and he's been instrumental in getting the bill through over the last couple of years when he was Mayor of Greater Manchester. So our current Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, really understands and gets what justice means and accountability and truth. And he he has a strong track record of supporting campaigns who need to get the answers to what's important to them. So I am hoping that he will continue that positive attitude towards justice, while he's in his tenure as PM. And that I'm excited about Number 10 North. I'm excited about what that will mean for our region and about, where that political force is and where it's held. I also work with Justice North, and I feel that Justice North and Number 10 North can be a really strong holding together. So I'm excited. I'm excited by the new PM, and I think that he will, or I'm hoping that he will carry on with this government in that thread of making sure that people have got a voice and people are heard, and more importantly, that those in power are held to account when they need to be. He knows what that means. He knows how important it is. Yeah. And I'm hoping that he remembers that when campaigns come knocking on his door.
He knows that on a human level. Yeah.
He does, he really does. And so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I genuinely appreciate it. You've given me so much value there. If someone is in need of help of what in any way we just talked about, or if someone is interested in getting in contact with you or working with you, where's the best place they can find you, or what's the best way to get involved?
So I work at Bereaved Jackson Cancer. You can look at our website. You can send me a message on there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can send me a message on there. You can give us a ring. And I'll get in touch. Always happy to have a conversation and a chat. If I can help, I always will. If I can point you in the right direction, if I can point you towards a support group or a campaign group that might be working on similar things that you're working on. And likewise, if you have any legal matter, Bereaved Jackson Cancer and Jackson Lees, we cover everything from access to justice to private clients to civil litigation to clin neg. We have if you need help, we are literally the people's law firm, and we've been looking after the people of Liverpool for a long time and hope to do for a long time going forward.
Amazing. So last question for me. If me and you were sitting here in a year's time, what would you like to be telling me?
I would like to be telling you that one of the campaigns I'm working on called it's DES Justice has got a public inquiry, which is something I'm working towards. I would like to be able to tell you that Zane's mummy and daddy got the answers that they needed. And I would like to be telling you that Hillsborough Law is on the statute books, having gone through the House of Lords and been given royal assent by King Charles. And that, a movement that grew from the people of the city of Liverpool has changed the law forever. And that people power is alive and kicking.
Amazing. You're very impressive, Claire. You're very impressive. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to edit this podcast today. It'll probably end up going out next week. Okay. But That was amazing. So thank you.
You're welcome.